We have some breaking news as the Toronto Maple Leafs have been linked by multiple insiders to Corey Perry upon his inevitable return to the NHL. So we'll break down those reports and discuss maybe the exact amount that he could be looking to get in free agency on this episode. But before we do, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We are on the road to 6,000. Your guys' support has been unbelievable lately. Let's make the push to get there. 80% of you who are watching right now aren't subscribed. So scroll down, and if you aren't already, hit that button. Now, Darius, this is going to be an interesting one. First of all, the Leafs' horrible loss yesterday. Let's pretend that didn't happen. And let's talk about a guy who could potentially make this team better in the sense of some, in the eyes of some people. So let's just get into the report. There's mutual interest between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Corey Perry per Carlo. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, so I'm not going to say it. And then yeah, there you go. And Frank Cervalli also reported the same thing and said this afternoon on the Daily Faceoff show that the Leafs have interest in Corey Perry. That is two notable insiders, Frank Cervalli being more notable. What are your thoughts on this? Let's get your thoughts on the Corey Perry situation in general. Obviously not on the exact situation that happened with the Blackhawks, but in the sense of what other teams that could be interested in. Do you think he fits well with the Toronto Maple Leafs current, I guess, I'm not going to say current core because he's 38 years old, but at least this season as they try to go for a cup?
I think it's a guy they should target. I've been wanting Corey Perry for a long time since the Leafs became competitive. How many ever years ago? Like 7, 8 years ago. I think he is a great fit for any team who wants to make a run in the playoffs. He is a great playoff player. Maybe not the stats to support it anymore as he's getting older. But still, like he tormented the Leafs. Like I know they won last playoffs against Tampa, but the last two playoffs, he's like every time that they meet, the Leafs are tormented by this guy, and really any team. He is just a pest to play against. Like he is exactly what you need in the playoffs. And obviously things haven't gone well for him so far this year. But make no mistake about it, things are going to cool down, and he's going to re-sign his contract. It's been announced basically that he's going to sign somewhere. We just don't know where. And if the Leafs can make it work, which I think it's really interesting because of the dynamic of the year so far, where he signed that contract in Chicago, it got terminated. So it's not like they're going to have to sign him to $4 million like Chicago did at the start of the year. He's already been paid out a majority of the contract before it got terminated. So the Leafs can afford to sign him to wherever he signs, he might sign for like minimum. So I think it's pretty interesting, the dynamic of how everything's played out so far. Will it happen? I'm not sure. Would I like it to happen? That would be fantastic. So I think he would fit right in with what they're trying to accomplish, and that's win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and a lot of Leafs fans out there might be saying, to Brad Treliving, get your priorities straight. We don't need another winger. We don't need another forward center. All of it. We need a defenseman and I guess a goalie to a lesser extent. But I tend to agree with you. Obviously, there was a lot of wild stuff that happened in Chicago. We're not going to dive too in depth into what that situation was, but ultimately, what came down to us, he's fine playing back in the NHL. He got paid out his contract, and I think most teams around the league, aside from maybe even rebuilding teams, to have that veteran guy there. We know that with the Blackhawks, he was kind of in theory, at some point, was a mentor to Connor Bedard before all the stuff came out. And here's what Elliot Freeman reported Wednesday, that Commissioner Gary Bettman had cleared Perry to return because basically said that Perry started working with experts on his mental health and substance abuse field. We all know what happened there. It's great that he's actually back, or got cleared to come back. That is great news. He's 38 years old. He's definitely not getting any younger. When you look at it, he's been around a few teams, especially since 2019. He was with the Ducks for a while. Remember how great he was. He played with the Canadians, and even this season, in his 16 games, he was off to one of the better starts in recent years for him. 9 points, 4 goals, 5 assists, and we thought that that was going to be a bargain for the Blackhawks, kind of grow with Bedard, not obviously, or help Bedard grow, and into the player that he ultimately ended up being before he got injured. Now it's looking like if he goes to any team he wants to, whether that is the Toronto Maple Leafs, whether it's the Boston Bruins, wherever he goes, he's going to make an immediate impact, and he could also just go and maybe choose to go to a young team to help develop some of the players there, because he's been around. He's a great player, and it's great to see that he got his stuff sorted and stuff better, and that he's back in the NHL, because that's ultimately the goal when stuff like this happens, especially when this kind of circumstance. But I don't know. I agree with you. I would love to see him with the Leafs. I don't know the figure he's going to get. You'd suspect maybe it's the minimum, especially given the fact that he already kind of got paid out his big contract. But I'm kind of all in on this. That being said, we do need defense a lot more than a Corey Perry. But again, you can kind of do them coincide. Just because you sign one doesn't mean you can sign the other, especially after yesterday's brutal loss, which a lot of Leafs fans are not happy about.
Yeah, and like you meant, yeah, we need defensemen. It's no secret, but I think when you look at this interesting kind of scenario that can play out here, you don't have to trade for Corey Perry in this scenario. He is a free agent. You can just sign him for free, quote unquote, without giving anything up besides money, and it's probably going to be min because, like we talked about, He's been paid out by Chicago pretty much the majority of that contract. And what I thought was interesting, why I think personally, and I don't think it's a surprise to most people why he's going to go to a contender right away, is because I think the whole thought process for Chicago was we'll get him in until the trade deadline. He'll help Bedard. He'll be like that mentor, maybe chipping for a few goals here and there, make his money on his side of things, and then they would trade him and retain his salary at the deadline to a contender. I think that's what the game plan was the entire time. And I guess, in terms of him personally, I don't think that's changed. I think he wants to win a Stanley Cup before his career's done. He's getting up there in age. I don't think he's going to make $4 million moving forward. So I think he ends up on a contender. If he goes to Boston, that's a real issue. So I think if you're the Leafs, push as hard as you can to sign him. Obviously, you can't, give him whatever he wants. You can't give him, a crazy dollar amount or anything, even like 2 million or something. Because again, you have to make room for a defenseman. They have to make a move for a defenseman still. But it's not a trade, it's a signing. I think you should push for it. Corey Perry would help big time in the playoffs, would be a huge help in the department where they're lacking. We've seen it for years. I think they've gotten better at it this year, that overall like team toughness and all that stuff. But Corey Perry would kind of put them over the edge for me. So I would push for him.
Yeah, when you're looking at the cap space, you can see this article here. The team has 2.116 million tied in injured reserve with Ryan Reeves, or for Ryan Reeves and Joseph Wall, and then they have a bunch of stuff. So the cap could work, but I don't know if again, whether it's a signing, whether it's trading and away a contract to make room. Like, it depends how much he's getting, and if you have to trade away pieces to make room, it makes it a lot harder. And we also saw reports from Elliot Friedman kind of circling back to the Perry situation, and it kind of lends to what you literally just said. He basically said that most other teams, from what he's hearing, would not have cut Corey Perry given the exact same circumstances, but because of all the stuff that happened with Chicago in the past, with a lot of their stuff, they kind of just cut him, which I think hurts them asset-wise in the long term. But I think that Corey Perry is still going to be very valuable, and if this scandal, or whatever you want to call it, the incident, hadn't it happened, he probably would have gotten a decent return for the Blackhawks. Nothing crazy. He's 38 years old, but there's a lot of teams like this. You can think about the Jets as well, teams who are on the cusp of maybe being cup contenders, wanting to add a depth forward. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, where do you think he would slide in line-wise with this current Maple Leafs team? Do you think he's a fourth, third, second, first?
I think it's interesting. I haven't given it much thought because this just came out, but I don't think he fits in the first line.
No.
I think that'd be weird. Second line to me is like pretty set. I really love that second line. The third line would be all right. Obviously, we've seen Robertson's coming in and out of the lineup. He only got in earlier this week because Gregor was out with the flu. So he's kind of like in and out now. It's weird. So I think that third line, Corey Perry on a fourth line too is not bad. He was on a fourth line in Tampa Bay, and he was very effective, especially against the Leafs. So if you slot him in on that third or fourth line, I think that's fine. Give him the minutes that he needs to kind of rough guys up and do his thing, just get under people's skin. So I don't know. I think it could be interesting. He can fit in the third or fourth line to me. Although personally, I've liked what the third line has brought so far this year as their own. That they're making their own identity there in that third line. So probably third or fourth line. Fourth line probably. It's Corey Perry. He's older. So.
Yeah, I think so. I think fourth line is probably the way to go, especially because he could raise the ceiling, especially for the other guys in the fourth line. The fourth and third line have kind of been a good story so far for the season for the Maple Leafs. But that'll wrap up the video. Let us know what your thoughts are on this potential signing of Corey Perry, and do you want to see Corey Perry in a Leafs uniform? Not something I was suspecting to say anytime soon. But thank you guys for watching. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now. We'll see you later.